On the 21st of August 2013, the Auditor-General tabled his audit report on operating water infrastructure using public-private partnerships. The Auditor-General provides assurance to Parliament on the accountability and performance of the Victorian public sector. The Audit Act 1994 defines the powers and responsibilities of the Auditor-General and the Victorian Auditor-General's Office. Under this Act, the Auditor-General conducts and reports on both financial and performance audits. The Auditor-General's mandate covers over 500 entities, including government departments, hospitals, local government, water corporations, police, emergency services, universities, and superannuation schemes. This presentation is a summary of the report, Operating Water Infrastructure Using Public-Private Partnerships. To read the full report, please go to our website, www.audit.vic.gov.au. In recent decades, demand for water has increased in response to population growth, changing water uses, and a changing climate. This has prompted significant investment to augment water supplies and improve water use efficiency. From the late 1990s, water corporations have used public-private partnerships, or PPPs, to deliver a number of water and wastewater treatment infrastructure projects. PPPs are a method of funding and delivering public sector projects in partnership with the private sector in a way that achieves value for money for the state and manages allocated risks. In the case of water sector PPPs, the private sector is contracted to design, build and operate water or wastewater facilities. PPP projects can also involve plant upgrades. Victoria has 12 water sector PPPs, 10 of which have been operating for at least 4 years. It was therefore considered timely to examine a selection of these projects. The audit assessed the operational effectiveness of 4 water and wastewater treatment PPP projects. This included examining whether contracts have been managed effectively and are supported by sound governance, and whether contracted services have been delivered as intended and represent value for money. Projects were selected based on their value and the time elapsed since plant operation commenced. The audit looked at the Ballarat North Water Reclamation Plant, managed by Central Highlands Water, the Aqua 2000 project, managed by Colaburn Water, the Campaspe Water Reclamation Scheme, also managed by Colaburn Water, and the Wodonga Wastewater Treatment Plant, managed by North East Water. The audit also examined the roles of the Department of Environment and Primary Industries, DEPI, and the Department of Treasury and Finance, DTF, during the operating phases of the selected PPP contracts. The audit did not assess the procurement or construction phases of these projects, as previous audits have examined these areas for other PPP projects. The audit concluded that, for all 4 projects examined, there were problems with contract management combined with poor oversight by the boards of the relevant water corporations. None of the corporations could demonstrate a fully effective approach. There is scope for all 3 authorities examined to improve their contract management, in particular regarding monitoring the financial health of their service provider and broader project risks. While Partnerships Victoria, a business unit of DTF, has requirements around contract management, only one authority, Central Highlands Water, substantially complied with these requirements. 2 projects have been successful in getting the service levels paid for. However, Colaburn Water's decision to not reduce payments for performance failures of the service providers for both its PPPs undermines its ability to get the desired service levels at the contracted standards and price. This contributed to Colaburn Water being unable to demonstrate that its PPP projects have delivered value for money. We'll now move on to the specific findings of the audit. In relation to governance and contract management, the audit found that all 3 of the water corporation boards examined cannot be assured that project risks are being effectively managed and value for money outcomes are being achieved. This is because of gaps in the quality and detail of information reported to them. Water corporations have not effectively monitored project-specific risks, benefits realisation, or the financial health of the service provider. Central Highlands Water had the most comprehensive approach to contract administration and performance monitoring. Colaburn Water's contract management has been less rigorous than its documented processes. North East Water had the least effective contract management approach due to an incomplete contract administration manual and inadequate arrangements for monitoring the service provider's financial health. Water corporations regularly monitor service delivery against the contract. However, none have effectively monitored project-specific risks or the service provider's financial health. The lack of financial monitoring of the Wodonga wastewater treatment plant service provider meant that North East Water was unprepared for the provider's voluntary administration in mid-2012. Closer monitoring might have identified the need to review existing controls associated with this risk. Despite not doing this, North East Water responded to the event appropriately. DTF and DEPI have provided minimal project oversight on the basis that water corporation boards are responsible for project performance. However, this approach is only effective when the boards provide sufficient oversight. However, this has not occurred. DTF's oversight role in particular has been poorly implemented. This contributed to the failure to identify risks associated with the voluntary administration of the Wodonga wastewater treatment plant service provider, despite DTF clearly aiming to identify these risks. The audit also assessed whether the projects examined achieved or are on track to achieve their intended outcomes. One element of this is whether service providers comply with the key performance indicators, KPIs, in the contract. The audit found that service providers for the Ballarat North Water Reclamation Plant and the Wodonga Wastewater Treatment Plant substantially complied with contract KPIs and were paid in line with their performance. However, Coliban Water made full payments on its 2 PPP projects, despite numerous non-compliance with contract KPIs that totalled nearly $4.8 million in potential deductions over the 3-year period reviewed. This reflects the board's preference to only enforce deductions where non-compliance had significant consequences or where the service provider's response was unsatisfactory. This approach to managing performance has lowered the level of service provided without service payments being adjusted accordingly. Changes to projects should not diminish value for money outcomes or inappropriately transfer risk. Change events under the Ballarat North Water Reclamation Plant and the Wodonga Wastewater Treatment Plant projects were satisfactorily managed and providers maintained the intended level of service. In contrast, Coliban Water has incurred up to $64 million in unplanned costs on its Aqua 2000 project to address financial risks raised by the service provider. Coliban Water advised that it believed it had to incur these costs to ensure continued water supply during a prolonged period of drought. However, this approach has undermined its ability to achieve value for money outcomes. None of the 3 water corporations assessed whether their PPP projects have achieved the intended value for money outcomes during the operating phase. This is due in part to a lack of guidance from DTF on a best practice approach to conducting such an assessment. Only Central Highlands Water could demonstrate that its project remains on track to achieve value for money against the project's quantitative public sector benchmark. The other 3 projects were approved under an early PPP model that led to inconsistent and unreliable benchmarking during the procurement phase. Coliban Water could not provide sufficient evidence to show that reliable public sector benchmarks had been developed during the procurement phases of the Aqua 2000 project and the Campaspe Water Reclamation Scheme. This makes the assessment of value for money challenging. The likelihood of achieving value for money is also affected by Coliban Water not holding its service providers to contracted levels and by its approach to managing contract changes. The audit made 7 recommendations, all of which were accepted by the relevant agencies. There were 3 recommendations made to all water authorities, 1 recommendation made specifically to Coliban Water, 2 recommendations to DTF, and 1 to DEPI. Other recent audit reports relating to public-private partnerships include implementation of school infrastructure programs, management of major road projects, management of prison accommodation using public-private partnerships, the new Royal Children's Hospital, a public-private partnership, and the new Royal Women's Hospital. These reports are all available on our website. If you have any questions about this or other reports, or if you have anything else you would like to discuss with us, including ideas for future audit topics, please call us on 03 8601 7000 or contact us via our website.